On the way to get a divorce, I suddenly developed the ability to read minds. My cool and aloof wife was giving me a look of pure disdain, but her inner voice was a completely different story. Honey, I don't want to do this. What if I said I wasn't feeling well? Would that work? Please don't leave me, Ethan. A girl who's gorgeous, with fair skin and legs for days like me, is a keeper. If someone else finds me, they're not giving me back. Later, even after she found out I could read her mind, she started deliberately thinking things that were the opposite of what she felt. Ethan made me so mad today. If he would just hold me while we sleep tonight, I'm sure I'd feel better by morning. Ours was a whirlwind marriage. We had agreed to get to know each other and build our relationship after the wedding, but we were both swamped with work, and Chloe's personality was just so reserved. We were less like a married couple and more like roommates. But this sudden contrast today sparked a powerful interest in Chloe for the first time. And most importantly, that inner monologue of hers didn't sound like someone who felt nothing for me. I was just starting to realize there might be a huge misunderstanding between us. Seeing the strange tension in the car, I decided to break the silence. This divorce won't affect you too much, will it? Hearing my question, Chloe just gave a flat, "Oh, it won't have a major impact, but in our social circle, there's an unspoken rule. There are no divorcees, only widows." Sob, she's talking about me. If Ethan divorces me, I'll just go throw myself into a crematorium. I froze. Did I just hear something completely insane? I glanced uncertainly in the rearview mirror, but it was just Chloe, staring out the window with a cool, detached expression. Maybe I was just imagining things. Just as I was thinking about heading home for a long nap after this was all over, that mournful voice echoed in my head again. "Oh, I'm so miserable. I should look up the number for the local funeral home. All the money in the world won't make me happy. Without Ethan, I'll just be sitting in our empty mansion in the Hamptons, crying my eyes out." I hesitated, then glanced at Chloe in the passenger seat again. This couldn't be an auditory hallucination, could it? So, was I actually hearing her inner thoughts? I was positive her lips hadn't moved a bit. As if sensing my stare, Chloe suddenly turned to meet my eyes, then raised a pale, elegant hand to her forehead. "I'm not feeling very well today. Can we postpone the divorce?" "Chloe, you did it. You were brave and you said it. Ethan, please say yes. Let's go home. Let's not get divorced. How am I supposed to live without you?" At this point, it was just getting noisy in my head, and I was now certain I was hearing Chloe's thoughts. I hesitated for a second before speaking. "All right, let's just head back for today." When she heard me, her eyes visibly brightened, but she kept her expression neutral and gave a small, prim nod. I knew I had to figure out what on earth was happening. As the courthouse disappeared in the rearview mirror, Chloe let out a sigh of relief. She spent the rest of the drive humming happily to herself in her head. I was just realizing I didn't know my wife at all. Wasn't she supposed to be this cool, aloof professor? Who was this little chatterbox? This broken record? This girl who was constantly cooing and whimpering inside her own head? When we got home, we went inside one after the other, just like always. Chloe, feigning her illness, went straight to her room. But just before she left, I heard her thoughts again. "I need to get online and search for ways to win my husband over. Oh right, my lingerie. I need to pick something out. I wonder what he likes. How can I casually walk in front of him wearing it? Ugh, this is so frustrating. Why does Ethan have to like the ice queen type? He just had to fall for a block of ice. Why can't he like me? I'm adorable." Okay, angry for 3 seconds. Now back to planning how to win him over. Hee hee. Hearing that, I froze. Wait, who the hell said I like ice queen types? That was a complete fabrication. My feelings were suddenly a complicated mess. My impression of Chloe had always been the unapproachable Columbia professor, exuding that cool, disciplined aura. I never imagined that underneath it all, she was a total softie who just wanted to be coddled. I sighed at the thought. The main question was, what do I do about this divorce? I've never been one to drag things out. I needed to talk to Chloe before we made a final decision, to see what she was really thinking. Just then, a knock came at my bedroom door. I snapped out of my thoughts and sat up. Chloe pushed the door open and just stood there in the doorway. She had clearly just showered and was wearing a black silk nightgown. Her almond-shaped eyes, which usually tilted up playfully, were now downcast, giving her a touchingly vulnerable look. "Is something wrong?" I asked, looking away, feeling a bit awkward. It was the middle of the night, just the two of us. It was hard not to let my mind wander. "I'm still not feeling very well. Could you maybe take a look?" she said, walking toward me. Before she even got close, her pale, pretty face was already bright red. "I hope he doesn't say no. I'll actually cry. I spent all night psyching myself up for this. I'm not a doctor. I said. If you're really feeling bad, I can take you to urgent care. I started to get up, but she pressed me back down with a soft hand on my shoulder. No, it's okay. I know what it is. Ethan, don't look at me like that. My heart is going to beat out of my chest. I'm so nervous. God, he's so handsome. Maybe it was because her thoughts were racing, or maybe she was just that nervous, but she suddenly blurted out, Ethan, my chest feels tight. Can you rub it for me? The moment the words left her mouth, the room fell completely silent. I could have sworn I heard her heart stop. Her mind, however, was a cacophony of internal screaming. Chloe was mentally kicking herself, wanting to down a few shots for her own recklessness. How could she have said her little fantasy out loud? That wasn't what she'd planned to say at all. But the next second, she grabbed my hand and placed it on her chest, biting her lower lip gently. My chest just feels tight. It'll be better if you just rub it. Her voice trailed off, but the screaming in her head grew louder. Fortune favors the bold. Go for it. Pounce on him. You can do it, Chloe Davis. Hearing that, the hand she had pressed to her chest twitched involuntarily. I swear it was a purely instinctual reaction. And, well, it was definitely soft. If this was some kind of test of my character, I was failing spectacularly. I think there's some herbal supplement for chest tightness. I tried to stand up, feeling awkward. Our position was getting pretty suggestive. But Chloe had come this far. She wasn't about to back down now. Seeing me try to get up, she reflexively pushed me back down. She must have misjudged her strength because the next thing I knew, she had tumbled right on top of me, and we both fell back onto the bed. Chloe definitely felt something. Whoa, Ethan has abs. I caught a glimpse once by accident. It wouldn't be too out of line to feel them now, would it? My dazed expression finally broke as her horny internal commentary made me blush. Why don't you, get up first? I'm starting to feel a little tight in the chest myself. As I suspected, Chloe's boldness was all in her head. The moment I spoke, she scrambled off me, fumbling and repeating, I'm sorry, her usual cool composure completely gone. Seeing her flustered state, I reached out to steady her, my hand somehow landing on her waist. The moment I touched her, her entire body went rigid, and she fell right back on top of me. Okay, at this point, it's really hard not to think you're doing this on purpose, I said, my voice laced with resignation. Chloe quickly pulled my hands away, her voice trembling. No, it's not that. You can't just touch my waist. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's sensitive. I suddenly remembered something. Right after we got our marriage license, we actually had a period where we got along pretty well. But one time at dinner, I casually put my arm around her waist, and she instantly tensed up, the smile vanishing from her face. I thought I had been too forward. After that, a few other accidental touches to her waist got the same reaction. She'd go rigid, her expression turning cold. Over time, I started to think she just didn't like me touching her. It looked like that was a misunderstanding. I quickly got up, walked to the door, and collected my thoughts. Come on out, I said. We need to talk. 2.5 minutes later, we were sitting across from each other on the living room sofa. Chloe smoothed out her nightgown, the blush still warm on her cheeks. She waited for me to speak, her expression a mask of indifference, but inside her head, she was freaking out. Talk about what? Humph. The only thing I want to talk about with him is our relationship. The last time he wanted to talk, it was to ask for a divorce. I wasn't here to talk about romance, of course. Though, seeing how cute she was being, the idea wasn't entirely unappealing. But that wasn't the point right now. Her bizarre behavior tonight felt a lot like an attempt at seduction. If that was true, then the misunderstanding between us was bigger than I ever imagined. When I brought up divorce before, you agreed. Was that because you also felt our marriage had problems? Chloe's expression remained cool. I don't believe we have any problems. We've been living exactly according to the terms we agreed upon. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why you want a divorce, but I've always respected your decisions. She finished, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. Why does Ethan want a divorce? Is it because he's found some other woman? Is she in better shape than me? Prettier than me? Does she seem more sophisticated and aloof? I mean, I'm faking it, but I've gotten really good at it. Who is this woman trying to steal my husband? That barrage of thoughts felt like a drill to my temples. It was pure noise pollution. Who would have guessed? The wife who seems so cool and reserved on the outside is secretly a non-stop chatterbox. Was this a buy one get one free deal? My brain was so overloaded I couldn't think straight. I couldn't stop myself from snapping, "Just be quiet for a second." The words were out before I realized my mistake. I looked up at her. Chloe pursed her lips, her voice small. I wasn't talking, but a second later, The chatter in her head started right back up. He's so stern, but wow, he's so hot when he's stern. Oh my God, I almost want to kneel and call him master. Chloe, you're such a pervert. But if it's Ethan, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. I was, once again, shocked into silence. Was it possible for the image of the cool, goddess-like professor to crumble so completely in a single day? Chloe was now getting nervous, wondering if she'd been too forward, if she'd revealed too much. Why else was Ethan acting so strange? But how could she not be anxious? He was about to divorce her. I finally cut through her frantic thoughts. I just want to talk about the issues between us. We agreed before we got married that if we couldn't make a spark after a few years, or if one of us met someone else, we'd get a divorce. You've always had a first love from high school, and that's something I can't accept. At the mention of her first love, Chloe's cool mask seemed to crack. The blush that had faded from her cheeks crept back up her neck. Her strong reaction made me forget what I was going to say next. The little spark of hope that had just ignited in my chest was instantly snuffed out. With a reaction like that, it was hard to believe she didn't have feelings for someone else. I sighed and looked away. If you're in love with someone else, there's no reason to stay tied to me. I can't accept my wife being in love with another man. Another man? Chloe's blush faded as she stared at me, confused. At first, she thought I'd discovered her secret fantasies and wanted a divorce because I thought she was a pervert. But now this didn't seem right. Ethan, how can you not accept it when my first love is you? Should I just come out and say it? This is so embarrassing. Is this my chance to confess? I should have worn something sexier. I was completely speechless. Did she just imply that I was her first love? Chloe went to college overseas, so we couldn't have met there. It must have been middle school or high school. But with a face like this, I must have been a decent-looking kid. It's impossible that I'd have no memory of her at all. I was about to ask, but Chloe had already stood up. When you brought up divorce before, it wasn't that I didn't care. There was a minor crisis with an experiment at the lab. As for my first love, that's all in the past. I really am not feeling well today. I think we can discuss this later, don't you? She spoke with perfect clarity, almost with a hint of her usual coolness. But some people are all business on the outside and a mess of whimpers on the inside. Right now, I was just thinking that women carry around a lot of strange emotional baggage. And I also needed some time to process our chaotic relationship. At least now, I was pretty sure that I was the first love she was hung up on. I nodded. Okay, how about in 3 days? I have to go out of town for a day trip tomorrow. Chloe just said, and looked at me through her glasses. I'll go get some rest then. Good night. The next moment, she was mentally screaming as she slowly walked back to her room. I leaned back on the sofa, my mind blank. The whole day had been surreal, but that voice in my head, calling me honey over and over, was undeniably sweet. Meanwhile, Chloe was rolling around on her bed like a madwoman. She felt like her whole body was on fire. She clutched a giant stuffed animal to her face, muffling the screams she desperately wanted to let out. Her big seduction plan had gone sideways, but she had clearly felt Ethan's reaction. And did he know? Did he know she'd been secretly in love with him for years? The thought made her bury her face in her hands, blushing. But a moment later, she sensed something wasn't right. She shot up in bed, her beautiful eyes filled with confusion. Wait a minute. If Ethan knew he was the one I was in love with, he wouldn't have said he wanted a divorce because I had someone else in my heart. She frowned. And how did he even know about that in the first place? She had been smitten with him since the first time she saw him, back when she was in 9th grade. He was a freshman in high school back then. Chloe was very young for her grade. She had always been bright, skipping ahead so that she was in 9th grade when most kids her age were in 7th. But being the young kid in class made her an easy target for bullies. One day after school, a few older students had her cornered when Ethan Walker, just passing by, stepped in. He looked pretty intimidating, and the bullies eventually backed off, muttering curses. A few of his friends came over from the end of the alley. Ethan, what's up? Come on, let's go shoot some hoops. Ethan turned and called back, you guys go on ahead. I think I found a lost kid. From that day on, Chloe never forgot the boy named Ethan Walker. But it was obvious he had no memory of her whatsoever. Was she really that unmemorable? The thought deflated her. She pulled out her phone and furiously typed a message to her best friend on iMessage. Didn't you tell me you heard he likes the cool, quiet type? I've been playing that part for 2 years. Why doesn't he like me? Her friend replied almost instantly. I think your real personality is way more likable. I told you that rumor might not be reliable. So, did you guys actually go through with the divorce? Chloe blinked, her long lashes fluttering. No, I told him I felt sick, so we didn't do it. And then, I don't know what came over me, but I tried to seduce him. And as you can see, I'm here texting you, so you can imagine how well that went. On the other end of the line, Olivia Reed stared at the message in shock, then typed back with shaky hands. Either he's got a problem, or you weren't sexy enough. There's no other way you could have failed. Olivia meant every word. This was Chloe Davis they were talking about. With her face and that body, if she just smiled, every guy at Columbia would have been tripping over themselves to get her number. But the rumor about Ethan liking the cool, aloof type had come from his frenemy, Sam Miller. It should have been reliable. Chloe lay on her bed, moping. And today he asked if I'd been in love with my first love for a long time. He said he didn't want his wife to be in love with someone else, and that's why he wanted a divorce. But there is no one else. It's always been him. Olivia paused, then replied drily, "This sounds like the plot of a 300-chapter romance novel." But Chloe replied without a second thought, "No way. We agreed to talk properly in 3 days when he gets back from his trip. I've already tried to seduce him. I might as well drop the act." Her voice was low, tinged with sadness. "If he really doesn't like the real me, I can't keep up this charade forever." Meanwhile, I was still basking in my newfound discovery, completely unaware of her turmoil. After sending out a few work emails, I went to my room to get some sleep. I run a graphic novel company. I'd poured everything into the studio in the early days, and it had slowly grown. Because of that, I'd long stopped seeing my colleagues as men or women. They were just my team. The studio had just become stable when my mom introduced me to Chloe. We dated for only 3 months before our whirlwind marriage. After we got married, I had intended to make time for us to get to know each other, but her cold attitude eventually made me give up. I was up early the next day for my trip. To my surprise, Chloe was already up. She came out of the kitchen holding a plate with a sandwich and a glass of milk. She turned at the sound of my footsteps, gave me a slight nod, and the corner of her mouth twitched into the faintest hint of a smile. "Good morning," she said, her voice as even as always. "I made breakfast. Would you like some? Ethan in a black shirt is so hot. My knees are weak. He looks so dominant. If he put on a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, he'd be the perfect sophisticated bad boy. Oh no, why is he just staring at me without saying anything? I'm falling for him all over again." I couldn't help but smile at that, then quickly composed myself and nodded. "Good morning, thanks for this." He thanked me. He thanked me. He thanked me. Sure enough, the screaming in her head started again, and some of it was getting a little R-rated. Even though I was getting used to it, her fantasies still managed to surprise me. I never would have guessed the seemingly prim and proper young woman had such a wild imagination. Maybe what she'd said in her head before wasn't just a heat-of-the-moment thing. Before I left, I glanced at Chloe, hesitating for a moment before saying goodbye. The woman who was internally sobbing about me leaving simply nodded with a serious expression. "Have a safe trip." But just as I turned to leave, she couldn't help herself. "Wait, your tie is crooked. Quick, ask me to fix it. Ethan, don't make me beg you." I had been about to just pull it off, but hearing her thoughts, I paused. "Sorry, could you fix it for me? I don't want to go back inside." "Sure," Chloe said, her voice a little too cheerful. She cleared her throat and added a more neutral, "Oh, let me get that for you." I realized her acting skills were actually terrible. How had I never noticed before? The joy and excitement in her beautiful almond eyes were impossible to miss. The tie wasn't even crooked. She just wanted an excuse to get closer. Sigh. Other wives get goodbye hugs when their husbands leave for a trip. I have to invent excuses. But it's fine. Their husbands aren't as handsome as mine. I won't see him for a couple of days. So sad. We were standing so close I could hear her thoughts clearly. But a hug didn't feel right, not when we had been on our way to get a divorce just yesterday. Just then, I caught that familiar, fruity scent of her perfume. My mind flashed to the dream I'd had last night, her slender waist, the sweet way her voice said, "Honey." I could feel my face getting hot, cleared my throat. Her hands lingered on my tie for a second longer before she reluctantly pulled away. "There, all set." I smiled and turned to go, but hearing the frantic train of thought in her head, I stopped. "I'll be back soon." Just as I'd hoped, the internal sobbing stopped, replaced by a chorus of kisses for Ethan. It was cute, but wasn't it exhausting for her, maintaining this huge contrast? For the first time, a business trip felt like a chore. I wanted to be back before I had even left. I was traveling with my good friend, Sam Miller. Over the years, we'd grown from a small studio into a decent-sized company. We'd signed a lot of artists and published several original graphic novels, but we hadn't made much headway into adaptations. When we met up at the airport, Sam looked at me, puzzled by my good mood. "Dude, why are you so happy? You're getting a divorce." And I heard you didn't even go through with it. You're well informed. How'd you know we didn't? Sam just laughed. He couldn't very well admit he was still in touch with Olivia Reed. Could he? They'd broken up ages ago. People would laugh if they knew he still had her number. More importantly, Sam didn't dare admit that he'd accidentally let my preferences slip during a chat with Olivia. He quickly changed the subject. I mean, your wife is a total knockout. If you two really split, guys would be lining up around the block. He was carefully probing as he spoke. His ex had put him up to this, asking him to gauge my feelings. Besides, Sam genuinely thought Chloe was great. She seemed like my perfect type. How had things gotten to the point of divorce? Hearing that, a slow smile spread across my face. You seem very interested in my wife. I was thinking about it, and I wonder if the reason I wanted a divorce was because you told me she'd been hung up on her first love for years. Sam hadn't expected me to bring that up. He swallowed hard. Yeah, I said that. The info was solid. It came straight from Olivia. He hesitated, then confessed in a hushed tone, Ethan, man, don't be mad. I had no idea the info was so bogus. That's when it clicked. Yesterday, Chloe's thoughts mentioned her trying to be the cool, intellectual type. It was because these two gossips had been playing telephone. But I don't even like that type. I shot Sam a dangerous look. I had a strong feeling that he and Olivia were the source of Chloe's entire misunderstanding. It wasn't a big deal, was it? I just saw you had a good first impression of her when you met, Sam said, growing more confident. I figured if Olivia was asking, it must mean Chloe was into you too. I was just giving her a little hint about what you like. A wingman, you know? Great job being a wingman, I said flatly. Don't do it again. That explained it. When we first met, Chloe wasn't nearly this cold. She was quiet, but she smiled a lot. But after we got married, she put up this wall. Add in the misunderstanding about her waist, and over time, I became convinced she was just unhappy with me. So that was the root of the problem. I took a deep breath. Some guys have a master strategist for a best friend. I got whatever this was. But at least now I knew where my wife got her bad intel. I guess I had both Sam and Olivia to thank for that. The trip didn't go as planned. What was supposed to be a 1 or 2 day affair dragged on for nearly a week. The talk I'd scheduled with Chloe had to be postponed again and again. But things were different this time. In the past, whenever I traveled for work, Chloe would basically go silent. But since I had to postpone our talk, I called to let her know. Chloe was understanding and didn't complain. After that, though, she started sending good morning and good night texts, and would occasionally share little stories about her day at the university. I got the feeling this was new for her. She even asked once, "Are these messages distracting you from work? I can stop if they are." I could practically hear the sad little whimper in her head as I read that. I texted back, "Not at all, they're interesting." She just replied with a simple, "Oh." It seemed like a cool response, but after that, she started sharing even more. A picture of a beautiful view she saw on her commute, a photo of a stray cat on the street. I'd been gone for a week, but I felt closer to her than when we saw each other every day. The trip itself was a bust. The deal fell through, but you can't rush business. I was still in a pretty good mood on the way back. As I got off the plane, I wondered what her reaction would be if I just showed up unannounced. She was probably teaching a class right now. The thought made me head straight for the university. Chloe was the youngest physics professor at Columbia. Despite her age, she was a lab rat through and through. She was only in her late 20s but had already published multiple papers in prestigious journals. The woman was brilliant, and just like that, she was supervising for graduate students. When I got there, I saw her in the lab, her expression stern, facing 4 students who looked to be about her age. "I'm going to say this one last time," she said, her voice sharp. "Either do the work, or if you genuinely feel I'm not capable of advising you, you can apply for a transfer." Her voice was genuinely cold, an icy edge I'd never heard before. She could seem aloof, but her tone had never been this harsh. I watched her through the glass partition and had a sudden thought. Maybe I really did have a thing for the ice queen type. For instance, Chloe right now, in her white lab coat, exuding this incredible, powerful aura. My heart started to beat faster. For some reason, my mind flashed to some anime I'd seen and the phrase, "Ma'am, please step on me." One of the students, a guy named Peter, knew he shouldn't be zoning out, but the man standing in the hallway was hard to miss. He couldn't help but sneak a few glances. But with only a few of them in the lab, his wandering gaze was painfully obvious to Chloe. "Peter, what are you looking at? Is your experimental data out in the hallway?" She turned her head as she spoke, and that's when I witnessed the ultimate transformation. The Ice Queen professor, who had just been mentally reciting a calming mantra to deal with her students, saw me, and a flicker of pure shock crossed her face. She didn't say a word, but her mind erupted into a full-blown party. Ah, Ethan's back. Is he here to pick me up from work? Was I too harsh just now? Oh no, Ethan, please don't get the wrong idea. I'm not mean, I'm super gentle. It's all this stupid experiment's fault. And these students who won't listen, not counting that brief moment this morning. I haven't seen him in 168 hours, which is 10,080 minutes, or 604,800 seconds. I miss him so much. Her syrupy sweet, Ethan, left me a little dazed, but I couldn't stop a smile from spreading across my face. I was done for. Hook, line, and sinker. I gave Chloe a nod, signaling for her to finish up. She clearly had lost all interest in scolding her students, but she tried not to make it too obvious. She turned back to the 4 students, her expression still tight and serious, but the entire atmosphere around her had shifted. The issues I pointed out today, if they happen again, don't bother coming back. Let's not waste each other's time. With that, she waved them away. The 4 of them let out a collective sigh of relief and immediately looked out the window. They'd all seen it. The moment their professor laid eyes on the man outside, her entire demeanor had changed. I didn't mind them staring. In fact, I was in such a good mood I gave them a nod. Chloe cleared her throat. What, do you all want to stay and continue your experiments? Because I'm leaving. She took off her lab coat as she spoke. One of the students, a girl named Lily, worked up the courage to ask, Professor, is that your husband out there? Chloe was secretly staring at me, already humming a happy tune in her head. This was the first time Ethan had ever come to pick her up from work. Hearing Lily's question, she gave a prim nod, but inside she was gushing. Isn't he handsome? Of course he is. The moment he shows up, he gets everyone's attention. I haven't even gotten to look at him enough myself. I wish I could just hide him away. I haven't seen him in so long. I've been looking at the stars every night thinking of him. But there's a difference. The stars are in the sky, but Ethan is in my heart, he. I listened to her internal monologue as she walked out, her face a mask of calm. When she reached me, she offered a faint smile. Sorry to keep you waiting. I didn't know you were coming today. The woman in front of me and the noisy voice in my head were 2 completely different people. I sighed internally and reached out, naturally tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. It's no problem. I came to take you to dinner. I'm sorry about postponing our talk. I said 3 days, but it ended up being over a week. As I raised my hand to her cheek, Chloe felt her heart skip a beat. All the cute, frantic thoughts in her head came to a screeching halt as her heart started beating erratically. It was true. Someone could completely hijack her heartbeat just by getting close. I'm done for. With just one touch, I think I've fallen in love with him all over again. This is the 998th time I've fallen for him. One more and it'll be 999. When is he finally going to fall for me? This thought felt different from the others. I could hear a genuine sadness in it. Maybe it was time I really got to know her, to understand these feelings she had for me. But the doorway of a university lab was obviously not the place for that conversation. We walked out side by side. We were quiet, but only on the outside. In reality, I was listening to a one-woman comedy show. She was a real talker, and her mind was full of a surprising amount of R-rated material. When I heard her debating whether or not to try and seduce me tonight, I couldn't resist glancing over at her. Professor Davis had beautiful features, but her face was usually an emotionless mask. With her glasses on, walking down the street, she had a powerful presence. She was trying so hard to press her lips together to keep from smiling, and it softened her otherwise stern features. The contrast between that and the fireworks-level celebration happening in her head was so amusing that the exhaustion I'd been feeling completely melted away. Anything you're in the mood for? I asked. Even though she'd been mentally chanting about wanting to take me for Korean barbecue, she just glanced at me and said, What are you in the mood for? Ugh, Chloe, what is wrong with you? That's the same as saying whatever. Ethan, I'm not a whatever kind of girl. I was supposed to be cool and aloof, not difficult. Can I have a do-over? I want to slap myself. Barbecue, barbecue, barbecue. I wonder if wishing for it really hard will work. If you don't have a preference, how about Korean barbecue tonight? That's fine, Chloe said, a hint of excitement slipping into her voice, though she tried to keep her face neutral. We're on the same wavelength. I'm so happy. So happy. I want to kiss him. My own mood lifted even higher. Since she was determined to stick to her Ice Queen persona, I decided to take the lead. So, what did your students do to upset you earlier? The happy humming in her head stopped abruptly. Her voice was a little stiff when she spoke. It was an experiment. I walked them through it step by step. I practically did it for them, but they doubted one of my steps, changed it, and ended up with corrupted data. Doubts are normal. I offered. But they were convinced they were right and refused to even try and verify my method. When she talked about her work, her tone became serious, her brow furrowing. The main problem is, this isn't the first time. I've proven them wrong several times before, but they still insist on doing things their way, refusing to follow my guidance. So she was genuinely frustrated and at a loss. Mentoring students like that was just a form of mutual torture. And Ethan saw me yelling at them. Does he think I'm mean now? I'm not mean at all. I'm really gentle. I wasn't much for academic research myself, but my entire family was in that world, so I could understand her frustration. I looked at her and said earnestly, "You should ask my parents for advice. They've mentored plenty of students." I'm sorry, is this topic boring? My life is so boring. It's just experiments and research projects. And then there's Ethan. Her mood seemed to dip at that thought. She was a boring person. No wonder Ethan didn't like her. I suggested you ask my parents not because the topic is boring, I clarified, but because I'm not in your field. I can't give you any useful advice, but they can. If you're too shy to ask, I can do it for you. At my explanation, her eyes lit up. It was the first time I'd seen someone's face literally light up like that. Her emotions had probably always been this transparent. I just hadn't been willing to spend the time to see them, which is how our misunderstanding grew so deep. We chose a Korean barbecue place in a mall near the campus. The restaurant had private booths, separated by partitions and hanging fabric curtains. They were small, but they offered a private space. When we sat down, the server asked if we wanted them to cook for us. Chloe answered without a second thought, "No, thank you. I'm going to cook for Ethan. The last time I came here with some other professors, they all had someone to cook for them. My husband deserves that too." Her logic was a little strange. But I soon realized I'd given her too much credit, because Chloe had absolutely no idea how to cook on the grill. The moment her pale hand touched the hot grill, she yelped. I immediately grabbed her hand. Does this basically count as holding hands? If Ethan would just kiss it better, I could. Never mind, I can't. Ow, that really hurts. I had been frowning at her hand, but hearing her internal whimpering, I felt a wave of helplessness. Kissing it was definitely not an option. Does it hurt a lot? I asked. Should I ask the server for some ice? Or run out and get some burn cream? It's fine. Chloe, seeing the concern in my eyes, completely forgot her ice queen act. Her voice even started to stammer. I'm okay. It doesn't really hurt that much. She carefully pulled her hand back. It wasn't that she didn't want the contact, but with me staring at her so intently, she felt her resolve weakening. She might be wild in her imagination, but in reality, she was incredibly shy. In the end, I just pressed the service button and asked for some burn cream. Chloe took it and quickly applied it herself. When the server asked again if we needed help with the cooking, she didn't dare say a word. Her plan to cook for me had ended in embarrassment. I waved the server off, picked up the tongs, and expertly started grilling the meat. Chloe's eyes went wide as she watched me place a perfectly cooked piece of meat in her bowl. Ethan cooked this for me. I almost don't want to eat it. Go on, eat, I said. I'll handle this. I worked at a barbecue joint for a month in college when I was broke. Hearing that, Chloe asked without thinking, "Was that when my parents were trying to get you to switch your major to academia?" She remembered seeing some really downbeat posts on his Facebook during the second semester of his freshman year. She'd seen a friend comment, telling him to just go home and apologize. Later, through his back-and-forth comments with friends, Chloe pieced together that his family had cut him off financially for choosing to major in finance. I, on the other hand, was surprised. That had happened my freshman year, and it hadn't lasted long. My older sister felt bad for me and secretly slipped me cash, so very few people even knew about it. So how did she know? Chloe started to panic. She had let her guard down and spoken without thinking. She was about to say she'd heard it from Sam, but when she met my gaze, she hesitated. I followed you on social media back then, but I was only a freshman then. Seeing that she was finally opening up about the past, I saw my chance. I kept my tone gentle. How old were you? You must have been in high school, right? Chloe's face flushed. The spot on her hand where she'd been burned seemed to be radiating heat, even though she'd already put cream on it. Maybe it wasn't her hand that was burning, but her entire being. She had always been decisive, quick to solve any problem, but when it came to the equation of love, she always hesitated. She didn't want to play the part of the Ice Queen forever. She wanted Ethan to know the real her. I could sense her fear, so I didn't press her. I was still stunned. This girl in front of me seemed to genuinely be in love with me, and I found myself wondering, again, where we could have possibly met. By the time you were a freshman, I was already studying abroad. I was a sophomore in college then. I knew my wife was brilliant, but still, wow, you're brilliant. I said, even more than I realized. The praise seemed to give her a boost of courage. Chloe took a deep breath and said it all in a rush. Actually, we met before I went abroad. You thought I was a lost elementary schooler and took me to a police officer. She looked a little embarrassed saying it, but she couldn't stop herself from explaining. I just hadn't hit my growth spurt yet. Even though she knew I probably wouldn't remember, she still looked a little disappointed by my blank expression. She quickly explained that because of renovations, the ninth graders had been temporarily moved into the high school building for a semester. I did remember that, but looking at the sophisticated, confident woman in front of me, I couldn't fathom how I could have mistaken her ninth grade self for an elementary schooler. She must have been tiny. As if reading my mind, Chloe's face turned red as she explained, I had skipped a few grades, and I really hadn't hit puberty yet. I couldn't help but laugh. Well, you must have been a very cute elementary schooler. I always wanted a cute little sister. If I went out of my way to help you back then, you must have been adorable, because I normally wouldn't have bothered. My words seemed to leave her in a daze. My attitude toward her had done a complete 180 today, and it filled her with joy. But what I didn't expect was for the line that had been replaying in her head to suddenly come out of her mouth. I want to be your wife, not your sister, she declared. It was very direct. I had only been speaking metaphorically. I didn't actually want another sister. But seeing her sitting there, face flushed with embarrassment, I thought this was actually great. It seemed she was finally letting her guard down. I decided to press my advantage. So, what's this about a first love? But Chloe was still mortified by her own outburst. Maybe because she thought we were getting divorced anyway. She had a what the hell attitude. It was like she couldn't hold back her true feelings anymore. It had felt liberating to say it, but now, meeting my gaze, she was cringing. Thankfully, I didn't press her on that particular comment. The thought made her break into an uncontrollable smile. Hee, Ethan is so gentle. Hearing that, I had to look down to hide my own smile, afraid I'd laugh at the sheer contrast. After a round of internal gushing, Chloe finally spoke up. Actually, the first love thing is kind of a misunderstanding, but not entirely. If I had to name one, it would only be you. Now that the words were out, Chloe wasn't about to retreat. I went abroad when I was very young, and my field of study demanded my full attention, so what I told you before we got married was the truth. My relationship history is as clean as my medical records. Chloe's feelings for me hadn't developed overnight. After I'd stepped in to help her, she had silently committed my face to memory. During that semester in the high school building, she learned a lot about me. I had good grades, an outgoing personality, and was always on the basketball court with my friends, with a crowd of girls watching from the sidelines. She'd heard I was nice to all the girls, but there were never any rumors about me dating anyone. She tried walking past me a few times, but it was like I'd completely forgotten she existed. I never even noticed her. She had secretly found my Instagram handle. I had accepted her follow request without a second thought, just sending a quick message asking who she was. It was the first time she'd ever done something like that, and she was terrified and felt guilty, though she wasn't sure why. It took her a long time to reply, I'm a student from your high school. Unfortunately, that message went unanswered. I never replied. And just like that, she finished, I've been following you on social media ever since. Chloe glanced at me nervously, afraid she'd see disapproval or disgust on my face. But all I felt was astonishment. I never would have guessed we'd met so long ago. I used to share a lot of my life on my social media accounts. I had a lot of followers, including plenty of underclassmen, especially girls, so I usually just accepted requests without thinking much of it. I looked at Chloe, who was watching me so cautiously. It was strange. It was the same face that, when she wore her usual stern expression, was too intimidating to look at for more than a second. But now, her almond eyes were filled with nervousness, and she quickly averted her gaze after meeting mine. I chose my words carefully. I'm sorry, was I rude back then? I got a lot of requests every day, so I usually didn't reply unless it was important. I couldn't keep up. Hearing that, Chloe let out a huge sigh of relief in her head. As long as he doesn't think I'm a creep. Hearing her thought, a smile returned to my face. I was actually starting to get used to this split personality of hers. It was kind of refreshing. I brought up divorce because I thought you were in love with someone else, and I didn't want to stand in your way. But now that I know it was a misunderstanding, would you be willing to give us another try? I said suddenly, looking at her with a new seriousness. We've been married for 2 years. We agreed to see how things went, but because of my work, I feel like I've completely neglected you. I'm sorry for that. If you're willing, I'd like to try again. I had been attracted to Chloe from the start, we just never had a chance to really connect. Besides Chloe, I hadn't really connected with any other women in years. I didn't think I'd be lucky enough to find another girl I was this drawn to. Before, I was attracted to her simply because she was my type physically. But now, after hearing her thoughts, I was genuinely intrigued. Who wouldn't be charmed by a beautiful girl with such a cute, hidden side? Unsurprisingly, Chloe's mind was already erupting in a chorus of HHHH. It was loud, but I could feel her pure joy. This girl really was in love with me. Even so, she managed to suppress her excitement and said with forced nonchalance, "Okay, let's give it a try." So how do we try? Do we start dating like a normal couple? Or if that's too fast, we can just start as friends. Not too fast at all. I wouldn't even think it was too fast if we slept together first and figured out the rest later. Is this what it feels like when things finally turn around? I'm going to date my husband. Wait, that sounds weird. But it doesn't matter. I'm so happy. Listening to her joyful thoughts while looking at her prim little face, I couldn't resist adding, actually, the information you got from Olivia about my preferences was a little off. I only said that as an excuse to turn people down. I'm not actually into the cool, intellectual type. Hearing this, Chloe's eyes went wide. He knew. He knew about her secret investigation. All those years of pretending to be an ice queen had been for nothing. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Then, what type do you like?" I smiled at her reaction. I was never really sure before, but lately, I think I'm starting to figure it out. Why don't you just try being yourself? We're married, after all. We're supposed to spend the rest of our lives together. He knows everything. He knows I was faking it. Oh, he knows. He knows it all. I've been the clown this whole time. But wow, my husband is so smart. The car ride home was quiet, but not entirely silent. The smile never left my face. Being with Chloe was a perfect cure for exhaustion. I couldn't wait to see what she was really like when she finally let her true personality show. When we got home, we were about to head to our separate rooms when Chloe suddenly stopped me. She spoke softly but earnestly. I'm not entirely faking it. I really am like that in front of my students. I thought that's the kind of woman you liked. But with people I'm close to, I can be a bit much. I was afraid you wouldn't like it. She bit her lip, looking at me nervously. By then, I had already loosened my tie and the top 2 buttons of my shirt. I smiled. How will you know if you don't try? She tilted her head, studying the smile on my face for a moment, and then a smile broke out on her own, as if a great weight had been lifted. All right then, she said. I'll give it a try. I just hadn't expected her to act on it so quickly. The next morning, I woke up to find breakfast on the table and a sticky note. I have class today, so I headed to campus early. Heat this up if it gets cold. A second line was clearly added as an afterthought, the handwriting slightly different. It read, "Good morning, Ethan." Seeing my name on the note, I had a feeling that, given what I now knew about her, she had probably wanted to write honey. I smiled at the thought, then finished my breakfast and headed to the office. After our morning meeting, I went back to my office. The moment I opened the door, I saw a woman waiting for me. She was attractive, but her makeup was laid on a little thick. She stood up slowly when she saw me. Ethan, the thought of Chloe's usual light makeup, which was so much more pleasant to look at, flashed through my mind. I was surprised that she had popped into my head so suddenly. I guess I'd been thinking about her a lot lately. Jessica Vance noticed my gaze only lingered on her for a second before I walked around to my desk and sat down. My cool reception clearly displeased her. We had met when we were both still students. Back then, when Jessica heard about my graphic novel studio, she thought I was a con artist. It wasn't until I came to her campus to discuss a contract that her opinion changed. No one's immune to a handsome face, and since I was visiting her frequently, the other girls started asking if I was her boyfriend. It was a huge boost to her ego. But after she signed, she realized I wasn't just visiting her. I was personally visiting all of our potential artists. But Jessica was convinced that if she became a star artist, her position with me would be different. Maybe a spark could ignite between us. The studio did take off, growing into a respectable company, but she never imagined I would suddenly get married. At my gesture, Jessica sat down across from me. Her eyes grew misty as she seemed to recall the past. Ethan, what was that message you had Kevin send me yesterday? You know I care about you. If you had just called and asked to see me, I would have renewed my contract. I was only told you had no intention of renewing, I said, keeping my tone professional. Kevin only brought it up because you're one of our veteran artists. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have even heard about it. I ignored her suggestive tone. I knew what Jessica was thinking. I was her boss, and more importantly, I was a married man. Miss Vance, a partnership has to be mutual. Since you have no intention of renewing, what's the point of this visit? Her voice was filled with disbelief. I've been with you since the studio was just starting out. Don't you think you're being incredibly cold? I gave her a weary look. She was acting as if I'd personally wronged her. I paid you every cent you were owed in royalties, and we spent a significant amount of money promoting your work to make it a hit. We operated strictly by the contract. In the early days, I had to borrow a lot of money from my sister just to pay our artists. The truth was, after she signed, I was so busy that I rarely saw her. She'd occasionally stop by the studio, and I always assumed she was there to chase a payment. I looked at Jessica's embarrassed face and sighed. Think carefully about the partnership. What I said is true. The company is looking to get into adaptations, and will naturally prioritize our own artists. I don't know what was going through her head, but Jessica suddenly stood up and walked quickly around my desk. I instinctively looked up and pushed back with my feet, my office chair rolling away from her. Her attempt to sit on my lap failed, and because I'd moved so quickly, she ended up sitting right on the floor. Just then, my assistant, Kevin, knocked lightly and peeked his head in. "Boss," he whispered, "I think your wife is here." From behind him, all Chloe could hear was a woman's shriek and the sight of my horrified expression. She was holding a large lunch container. She hadn't intended for him to escort her. She had been checking in at the front desk like a normal visitor. But Kevin had passed by and recognized her. He'd only met Chloe once, but with her looks and aura, she was unforgettable. So Kevin had hesitantly called out, "Mrs. Walker?" Hearing the title, Chloe had to fight to keep a huge grin off her face. Inside, she was doing cartwheels. She loved being called Mrs. Walker. It suited her perfectly. After all, the boss here was her husband. On the surface, however, she just gave a small, dignified nod. In front of strangers, her cool, intellectual persona wasn't an act at all. Once Kevin confirmed her identity, he enthusiastically led her toward my office. When she heard I had a visitor, Chloe hesitated, not wanting to interrupt. But Kevin, who was well aware of Jessica's designs on me, knocked and opened the door in one smooth motion, figuring he was doing me a favor. And that's how they walked in on that scene. Jessica's move had been so sudden, and now she was sitting on the floor, looking utterly pathetic between her shriek and her disheveled state. I was still in shock myself when I turned and met my wife's wide, curious eyes, and heard her piercing inner thoughts. Why did I just hear a woman scream? Is there really another woman? No, Ethan said there wasn't. I have to trust him. Who is this disheveled woman picking herself up off the floor? My head was buzzing. I quickly called out, "Kevin, help Miss Vance up. Should we call an ambulance?" Kevin snapped out of his daze and rushed over. Chloe put down the container she was holding and also went to help, reaching Jessica just as she was getting to her feet. As a woman, it was probably more appropriate for her to help. That must have been why Ethan hadn't rushed to help her himself. At that moment, Jessica just wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Who tries to seduce someone only to end up falling flat on their butt? She shot me a glare, feeling like she'd been wasting her charms on a blind man. Her gaze then shifted to the woman helping her up. Jessica froze. She was stunning. Even as a woman, she had to admit the girl in front of her was breathtakingly beautiful, especially those expressive almond eyes, which were now looking at her with concern as she thoughtfully straightened Jessica's clothes. Jessica, who hadn't blushed once while trying to seduce me, now felt a pang of shame under the other woman's gaze. I'm fine. I cleared my throat and spoke up. "Honey, what are you doing here?" What I was really thinking was, see that, this is my wife. With a wife this beautiful, I'm not going to cheat. I hoped Jessica would finally get the message. But my single word, honey, stunned all three of them. He called me honey, for the first time. Husband and wife, it sounds so right. I love him so much today. I love hearing it. I wonder if he'll call me that every day. I'd be the happiest wife in the world. Jessica, however, was completely dumbfounded, the pained grimace from her fall frozen on her face. This was Ethan Walker's wife? No wonder he wasn't interested in her. Chloe was ecstatic on the inside, but her face remained calm as she answered my question. "My class just ended, so I thought I'd see if you were free for lunch. I'm heading to the library near your office in a bit. I just sent you a message." I glanced at my phone on the desk. I'd seen Jessica waiting for me the moment I got out of my meeting and hadn't had a chance to check it. In the end, a dazed-looking Kevin escorted Jessica out of the office. I let out a huge internal sigh of relief. Thank God I dodged in time. If my wife had walked in on that, there would have been no explaining it. I was still worried she might get the wrong idea. But when I turned to explain, I was met with a face beaming with pure happiness. Just moments ago, in front of others, she had been so poised and elegant. Now she just looked endearingly goofy. Honestly, she looked like the kind of sweet, Naive girl who could be easily tricked into anything. Who would have guessed that this woman was a physics professor? I sighed. Have a seat. Did you bring lunch? At the mention of food, Chloe snapped out of her daze, completely forgetting her excuse about just stopping by after class. Yes, I came right after I finished making it. She looked at me expectantly. I hope you like it. I saw on your old Facebook posts that you like spicy food, but I also remember you have a sensitive stomach, so I made a spicy version and a mild one. I was surprised, but I smiled and thanked her. Seeing how happy she was, I grew curious. Aren't you going to ask what that was all about? You're not jealous? That scene was pretty misleading. To my surprise, Chloe just smiled as she continued to unpack the food. I could tell what was happening. From the look on your face, you wanted to teleport out from behind your desk. How could I misunderstand that? She was just making a scene. I'll always trust Ethan unconditionally. He's not that kind of person. I have excellent judgment. I finally understood why so many guys wanted an understanding girlfriend. The difference between someone with emotional intelligence and someone without it was stark. The reason my old business partner suddenly quit was because his girlfriend at the time was pathologically jealous. A little jealousy can be cute, but she was completely unreasonable. If her boyfriend was in the same room as another woman, even in a crowded public space, she would have a meltdown. But my friend thought it was a sign of her love, so he actually quit, leaving me to deal with the mess. Hearing Chloe's thoughts now, I smiled and said firmly, well, thank you for your trust, but I'm still going to explain. I don't like misunderstandings. Chloe looked at me, her eyes full of sincerity. After I finished, she nodded. I know, Ethan, you can tell a lot from a person's eyes. She smiled and pointed to her own. I can see for myself, and I trust you. To be honest, if that woman had actually touched him, I probably would have been a little upset. Possessiveness is natural when you love someone, but the look of pure terror on Ethan's face, the way he looked like he wanted to run for the hills, was all the reassurance I needed. We don't have much time together as it is. There's no point wasting it on unimportant people and things. We ate lunch right there in my office. Chloe was an excellent cook. It was the first proper meal she had ever made for me. Chloe smiled and explained, I went to study abroad at a young age, so I had to learn to do everything myself. My mother moved back to the States after I turned 18. I suddenly realized that now that we had cleared the air, Chloe wasn't so tense anymore. She actually smiled a lot, and it made her look even younger. The lunch lasted a while, but it was incredibly rewarding. I felt like I was finally getting to know her. After we finished, even though she was mentally whining about not wanting to leave, Chloe cleaned everything up with brisk efficiency. The morning's stressful meetings felt a world away, cured by my secretly sweet and affectionate wife. As I helped her clean up, our hands brushed. Chloe froze, then looked up at me and whispered, I'm getting shy. She said it so bluntly, getting shy just from our hands touching. I was taken aback for a second, then I couldn't help but laugh. Professor Davis, you're kind of adorable. The adorable person in question was now pressing her lips together, trying desperately not to smile. You were just calling me honey? Why the sudden switch to Professor Davises? She mumbled, her face turning an even deeper shade of red. Her voice was barely a whisper, and she sat up ramrod straight, trying to appear composed, but she couldn't meet my eyes. It seemed our talk last night had really opened the floodgates. She fell silent after her comment, but the expectant look on her face was impossible to miss. I thought to myself, you call me honey hundreds of times a day in your head, but you've never said it out loud. I raised an eyebrow. Well, since I've already called you honey, it's only fair you return the favor, right? I watched her fidget with her hands, her teeth worrying her lower lip. She was still blushing, unable to speak. I wasn't in a rush. I turned, opened a drawer, and took out the burn cream I'd bought that morning. Did you put anything on your hand last night? Seeing that I wasn't going to force the issue, Chloe felt a confusing mix of relief and disappointment. She'd said it 1,000 times in her head, but now that he'd asked her to say it out loud, the words wouldn't come. My question about her hand finally broke her out of her trance. I walked over to her with the cream. Her long, pale hands rested on her lap, looking delicate and beautiful against her dark slacks. The red mark from the burn stood out. You need your hands for your work. You have to be more careful. Here, put some of this on. I gently placed the tube of cream in front of her. To my surprise, she just blinked, then, as if summoning all her courage, held her hand out to me. My left hand is a little clumsy. Could you put it on for me? I looked at the hand she was offering and had to resist the urge to remind her that she'd managed just fine on her own last night. But I wasn't that clueless. Chloe was looking up at me with wide, expectant eyes. Ethan's hands are so warm. My own hand feels like it's melting. Actually, it's not just my hand. My whole body is melting. Unsurprisingly, Chloe's mind was off to the races again. But you couldn't tell from her expression. She looked perfectly calm, almost stoic. By the time her thoughts had progressed to a beach trip where I would be applying sunscreen to her entire body, I had finished applying the cream. Luckily, she'd treated it quickly yesterday, but the mark was still visible on her pale skin. I lifted her hand to my lips and blew on it gently. It was just a habitual gesture. The warm air on the cool cream must have felt soothing. For a moment, Chloe seemed to completely freeze. Even the frantic monologue in her head went silent. The sudden quiet was surprising. I looked up at her. Sorry, just a habit. As I let go of her hand, she looked almost disappointed. It's okay, she said. I should get going. Seeing her disappointment, I couldn't help but add, next time, if you just tell me you want to have lunch with me, I think I'd be even happier. The girl who had been looking so dejected a moment ago visibly brightened. A wide smile spread across her face, her beautiful eyes curving into crescents. Her ice queen facade had completely shattered. It was so endearing it made me want to reach out and pinch her cheek. I rubbed my fingers together at my side, resisting the urge. I'd better not. She probably wouldn't be able to drive straight if I did, with her mind going a mile a minute. I'll walk you out, I said. I have a meeting this afternoon, so I can't drive you. Chloe followed obediently beside me. Her mind was surprisingly quiet, which made me glance at her a few more times. My company isn't huge, and this was normally lunchtime when the office is half empty. But when I opened my door, I saw that nearly everyone was at their desks. The office was more packed than it is for a company-wide meeting. Chloe, too, was a little taken aback by all the staring. She had put her glasses back on before we left my office, and standing beside me, she once again looked every bit the cool, beautiful Professor Davis. But only I could hear her restless inner monologue. Ethan's employees are so hard-working. Are they looking at us? Do they think we make a good couple? Hee, a perfect match. If I'd known so many people would be watching, I would have worn a nicer outfit. A tactical error. I'm still new at this. I should visit a few more times. Ethan wouldn't mind, would he? He's not saying anything, so he probably doesn't mind. Yep, it's decided. Hearing that, I glanced at her and smiled. Let's go, don't mind them. They're probably just curious to see what my wife looks like. I gently put my arm around her shoulder as we walked. I was still a little hesitant to touch her, worried it would make her uncomfortable, but Chloe had other ideas. Her steps faltered. She took a tiny step back, and then she deliberately leaned into my embrace. I felt a sudden warmth as her soft body pressed against me. We're hugging. Ethan is such a gentleman. It's so frustrating, but it's okay. I can be the one to make a move. Hey, does Ethan have pecs? I bet they're nice. I wonder when he'll let me touch them. Hearing that, I quickly steered her toward the exit, trying to derail her train of thought before it went completely off the tracks. Just as we reached the door, a chorus of playful shouts came from behind us. Goodbye, Mrs. Walker. Come back soon. My company was full of young people, and once one person started, the rest of them had no shame. I shot them a warning glare over my shoulder. I was worried Chloe would be embarrassed and might not want to visit again. But clearly, I was overthinking it. The smile on Chloe's face grew even wider, her voice lilting with amusement. Your employees have good taste. I smiled back at her. Which part did you like? The part where they called you beautiful. To my surprise, Chloe stopped walking, unlocked her car with the key fob, and took the empty lunch container from my hand. Once she had everything situated, she looked at me and said seriously, No, it was when they said we were a good match. I think they have excellent taste. I'm heading out now. Goodbye. With that, she turned and hurried to her car. My heart is racing. I said it out loud again. Achievement unlocked. Daily flirtation with husband. Just as she was opening her car door, she heard my voice, laced with a smile, call out from behind her. I think they have good taste too. Everything they said was spot on. So, will Mrs. Walker be visiting often? In her head, Mrs. Walker was chanting yes, 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 like a broken record, on the verge of breaking into song. But what came out of her mouth was, I'll try. Goodbye. I watched her go, amused. She was so used to this way of speaking and acting, it wouldn't be an easy habit to break. But things were already starting to change, weren't they? Before, she only dared to say these things in her head. Now, she was like a kitten, tentatively extending its claws, letting slip some of the things she'd previously only dared to think. We could take it slow. It seemed she was bolder when she had an audience. In her head, she was fearless, but in reality, the slightest bit of flirting made her blush. I watched her car drive off before turning back toward the office. The moment I walked in, a few of the managers I was friendly with pulled me over to a chair they had set out. Like I said, it was a young company. We were all around the same age and didn't have a lot of rigid rules. The group, led by Kevin, surrounded me, firing off questions. Mrs. Walker is so young, and she's a professor? That's not the point. The point is, where do you find a professor that beautiful to go on a date with? With looks like that, her students must be blessed. If my college professors had looked like her, I never would have failed a class. I listened to them with a smile, but at the mention of not failing, I finally spoke up. You'd probably still fail. She teaches physics. That shut them up. We had some smart people in the company, but this was a woman who taught university-level physics. I suddenly felt a bit childish, but I couldn't stop myself. My wife is probably what you'd call a genius. She's young, but she's brilliant. I stood up and gave the managers a small smile. Let's not daydream, guys. A wife this perfect is a once-in-a-lifetime find. With that, I turned and walked away without a backward glance. Just as I left, I heard someone mutter, "He's the boss, but man, he's so smug you just want to punch him." See? No boss is ever a good guy. I loved my company, and I loved this kind of work environment. We could relax when it was time to relax and work hard when it was time to work. It was the kind of environment every young person dreamed of. After leaving my office, Chloe didn't go home. She went to find Olivia. She and her best friend had gone shopping for some battle armor a while back, but she hadn't had a chance to use it yet. She was clueless when it came to relationships and desperately needed a strategist. Olivia was your classic trust fund kid. Her family was loaded, so she spent her days as a minor influencer, posting makeup tutorials and restaurant reviews on TikTok. Chloe found her having afternoon tea at her family's cafe. Olivia saw her and waved. "Hey, gorgeous. What can I get you? Where are you coming from?" Olivia had known Chloe for years, but she still found herself momentarily stunned by her friend's beauty. She was just that gorgeous. Chloe sat down across from her, a playful smile on her face. "Wow, how did you know I just came from having lunch with my husband? I'll pass on the coffee. He just made me tea." Olivia gave her a tight-lipped smile. "How could I possibly know you just came from seeing your husband? What, are you here to rub it in?" She looked at the pure, unadulterated joy on Chloe's face and just didn't get it. How had Ethan managed to be married to this beautiful, sweet girl for 2 years and not made a move? She'd have to find time to ask Sam if the guy was all talk. Olivia looked at Chloe, a serious expression on her face. "You're telling me you two have been married for 2 years and you're still in this chaste, hands-off relationship? You haven't even held hands. If you ask me, you two should just sleep together and figure the rest out later." The suggestion even had Chloe considering it. Honestly, a part of me thinks so too, but he must have his reasons for acting this way. I think he's trying to respect me and our relationship. Ethan's so good to me. Olivia slammed her hand on the table. "This isn't about respect. You've got the looks, you've got the body, you've got the brains. Well, scratch that, you're a complete idiot when it comes to Ethan. What man has a perfect wife like you and insists on a pure relationship?" Olivia felt like she was losing her mind. If Chloe were her wife, she'd have her locked away for daily fun and games. Finally, Chloe couldn't take it anymore. "My husband is not incapable," she said earnestly. "Please stop saying that." This wasn't the first time Olivia had said it. Chloe knew it was just her friend's way of talking, but it still bothered her. "Sorry, I have a big mouth, but I don't really mean it," Olivia said, holding her phone up to Chloe's face. "Here, let me show you something for adults. A chaste romance is fine, but I think you two are better suited to the sleep together first, ask questions later approach." "Really?" Chloe asked, a little flustered. "Is that right?" Chloe had a feeling Olivia wasn't the most reliable source of advice. But the sleep together first idea, she secretly agreed with it. She was just too much of a coward to act on it. She handed the phone back to Olivia, a suspicious blush on her cheeks. "I feel like I need a proper reason. I can't use this yet." Olivia sighed at her friend's blushing face. "Just have a few drinks, pretend you're drunk, and sneak into his room. Problem solved." I was completely oblivious to their conversation. I ended up working late and couldn't make it home for dinner, so I just had takeout at the office with my team. By the time I was done, it was after 8. On a normal night, I would have stayed to clear out some of the less urgent paperwork on my desk. But today, the image of Chloe arriving with that lunch container kept popping into my head. In the end, I decided to call it a night. If we were going to make this work, we had to make time for each other. After leaving the office, I hesitated for a second before calling Chloe. She answered quickly, and I could tell from the cheerful lilt in her voice that she was happy. I didn't even realize it at first, but there was a smile in my own voice too. Do you want to get a late-night snack? I'm heading home now. There was a pause on her end before she answered cautiously. I'm not very hungry right now, and it's still early. If I say no, does that mean I won't get a chance to have a late-night snack with you tonight? I was taken aback for a second. Of course not. If you think it's too early, we can go out later. I'll head home now. Okay, she said, her voice bright. I'll wait for you at home. Her voice was so light and happy it was infectious. After hanging up, I caught my own goofy grin in the rearview mirror and clicked my tongue. Done for. Hook, line, and sinker again. Look at you, acting like you've never been flirted with before. I guess even this tentative, getting to know you phase was enjoyable with a girl I was so drawn to. It was just a shame we'd wasted 2 years. But it wasn't too late. When I got home and opened the door, the figure on the sofa shot up and greeted me with a sweet smile. You're back. I took in what she was wearing and froze for a second. Usually, when we were home, we kept to our separate rooms or studies. Even when we ran into each other in the house, she was always impeccably dressed. But now, perhaps because of the summer heat, she was wearing a simple white tank top and black shorts. Just then, Chloe trotted over to me, her long hair down, her eyes sparkling as she looked up at me. Do you want a shower first? It's still early, she said, naturally reaching out and taking the tie from my hand. The dark red silk tangled around her elegant fingers, a sight that felt surprisingly suggestive. I took a sharp inward breath. Maybe I'd been working too hard lately. Why else would my heart suddenly be racing? Before I could even process it, I heard a delicate whisper in my head. This simple girl next door look. I wonder if Ethan will like it. Hearing her thoughts and seeing her steal a glance at me, a smile played on my lips. I reached out and gently patted her head. Isn't the AC a little cold for that? The outfit wasn't revealing, but it seemed a little light for sitting in air conditioning. Chloe looked as if I'd read her mind. She blushed and mumbled, It's okay, actually. I turned the temperature up a bit, so it's not that cold. She had, of course, changed into this outfit the moment she got off the phone with me. I smiled. All right, I'll just go change then. I'll shower when we get back. I started up the stairs to my bedroom, but after a few steps, I turned back. Actually, I said, you look good in anything. Sure enough, even from the top of the stairs, I could hear the HHHH in her head, followed by a broken record repetition of how her husband had complimented her. It was as adorable as a little kid. Chloe's looks were striking, almost intimidatingly so, from her features to her figure. But her real personality was this adorable. I felt like I truly hit the jackpot. We had both, by chance, ended up in black and white tops. It looked like we were wearing a couple's outfit. I raised an eyebrow at her. Looks like we're on the same wavelength. Though I liked the last outfit too. Chloe's lips curved into a small smile at the compliment. I'll wear that one for you at home then, not for going out. Let's go. She came to my side as she spoke. If Ethan likes it, I'll only wear it for him. I wonder if he'll like the new stockings and lingerie I bought. Hearing that, my steps faltered. Wait, stockings and lingerie? Was she serious? Chloe quickly reached out to steady me, her body naturally pressing close. What's wrong? She asked, a hint of concern in her voice. My expression must have been strange. I shook my head. Nothing. What are you in the mood for? It's pretty late. How about some porridge? I know a place that just opened across the street. I hadn't even realized so many new shops had opened up nearby. I rarely paid attention to my surroundings on my way home. From the way she spoke, it sounded like she was a regular. Do you go out for late-night snacks often? Sometimes. If I get back from the lab late, or if I get hungry while reading at night. That reminded me. When we first moved in together, she used to knock on my door and ask if I wanted a late-night snack. I was usually still working and didn't have a habit of eating late, so I always declined. I don't remember the expression on her face. I probably didn't even look up from my work. So after I rejected her, she just went out to eat by herself? The thought made me look at her again, more closely this time. Her profile was clean and simple, her skin flawless even without makeup. The corners of her mouth were turned up in a slight smile as she told me about all the best places to eat in the neighborhood. Maybe because I hadn't responded, she turned to look at me, her eyes meeting my steady gaze. Chloe paused, then touched her own cheek. Is there something on my face? No, I said, smiling. You must get told you're beautiful all the time. Her face went blank for a second, and then I got to watch in real time as a blush spread from her neck all the way to the tips of her ears. In a matter of seconds, her entire face was bright red, and her eyes started to dart around. Is that so? I guess. Even as she said it, she couldn't suppress a smile. Her mind was a jumble. Whenever she made eye contact with me, it was like she lost control of her thoughts, and especially her mouth. Right now, for instance, she was fighting the urge to blurt out, "Since I'm so beautiful, can you hold my hand?" Her voice trailed off into a mumble, and she lowered her head. I found it amusing, but I reached out, took her hand, and held it in mine. "I don't have a lot of experience with this," I admitted, "especially the relationship part. I'm worried about moving too fast and making you uncomfortable, so if you want something, you can just tell me." We agreed we'd try to make this work, right? She just mumbled, "Oh, okay," and I got the feeling she hadn't heard a word I said, but the hand I was holding wasn't still. It shifted in my palm. I wasn't sure what she was doing, but I relaxed my grip. I felt her soft fingers move, slowly weaving through mine until our hands were clasped together. She gave our joined hands a happy little swing, then tilted her head to look at me, the blush on her cheeks refusing to fade. I looked at her and couldn't help but smile back. We had just walked into the porridge shop and sat down when she announced, "Since you said I can say whatever I want, I'm going to say it." I nodded, unprepared. "Okay, go ahead. I'm listening." She took a deep breath, looked me straight in the eye, and declared, "Our parents want us to give them a grandchild soon." I stared at her, dumbfounded. I had told her to be direct, but I didn't mean that direct. Her opening line was about having a baby. I felt a little helpless, but I wasn't repulsed by the idea. It even made me think that maybe I shouldn't be approaching our relationship with the same logic I used for business deals. Compared to her honesty, I felt like I wasn't being open enough. Chloe looked at me, a little taken aback. "Was that too direct?" "I'm sorry, but there's really no need to beat around the bush. Did you forget we're having dinner at our parents' house tomorrow?" We'd been married for 2 years, and even though our relationship was strained, we still had dinner with our parents once a month. "I remember," I said. "I'll come pick you up tomorrow. You don't have class in the afternoon, do you?" Her voice was filled with surprise, which she quickly tried to hide. "You remember my class schedule. I'll be waiting for you at home tomorrow afternoon, then. But I should warn you, my parents will probably bring up the baby thing tomorrow." He remembers my class schedule. That basically means he cares about me. And if he cares about me, that means he has me in his heart. And if he has me in his heart, that means he likes me. Hey. I've warned him about my parents' baby pushing. It's all my fault for not being able to give them what they want. I used to be able to use the "I'm too busy" excuse, but I've used it so many times I don't think they'll buy it this time. I'm so stressed. So my parents had been pushing for a baby for a long time? I'd never heard a word about it. That could only mean one thing. Chloe had been shielding me from it this whole time. Just then, the porridge arrived, steaming hot in its clay pot. Looking at her simple, pale face through the rising steam, I thought about how this seemingly naive girl, who was a mess of whimpers on the inside, was also surprisingly resilient, secretly loving me, pretending to be someone she thought I'd like day after day, and shielding me from my family's pressure. There were probably a lot of other things she'd done for me after we got married that I didn't even know about. From now on, if my parents bring up the baby thing, just tell them to talk to me. Or just tell them I'm the one who's not ready. It's okay, really. My parents aren't unreasonable. They just think, we've been married for 2 years. That's what she said, but the scheming look in her eyes was impossible to miss. If we don't bring up the baby, how am I supposed to get into his bed? This is the only reasonable excuse I could come up with after thinking about it for ages. I don't really care about having a baby. I just want to be close to him. Now it was my turn to pause. The guilt and gloom I'd been feeling moments ago suddenly lifted. I looked up at Chloe, who was staring at me with an expression of pure, undisguised adoration. She probably hadn't expected me to look up so suddenly. She froze for a second, then blushed and quickly looked away. "You mentioned you lived alone when you were studying abroad in your own room. Do you value your personal space?" It was fine. I was still young then, and my mom lived with me for a while. It was only after I got older and more used to living abroad that I got my own place. What does he mean by asking me that? Oh, I'm probably overthinking it. I do value my personal space, but I'm too scared to say it. But just imagine if I say that there's a 1% chance he might invite me to move into his room. It's dark out. A girl can dream, right? Hey, Ethan's being so gentle tonight. It's making me bold. I had to fight back another laugh. The tone of her thoughts was just too amusing. How could a distinguished professor have such a one-track mind? "So, do you want to move in with me? Stop fantasizing. I'm actually inviting you." At that, her previously active inner monologue came to a dead stop. Her already large eyes went even wider as she stared at me, looking completely stunned. I quickly added, "Of course, it's just a suggestion. If you don't want to, that's fine. It's just, we're married, and you seem pretty eager to get into my room. Before I could even finish, Chloe blurted out, "I'll move." She immediately clapped a hand over her mouth, embarrassed, and stammered out an explanation. "It's just, we've been married for 2 years. If we're going to make this work, living together seems reasonable, right?" She glanced up at me, and when she met my smiling eyes, she quickly looked down again, embarrassed. I loved watching her little movements. She reminded me of a kitten I once had, cautiously testing boundaries. The excited screaming in her head was getting a little overwhelming, so I quickly spoke up. "That's good. And don't worry, I won't do anything until our relationship gets to that point." Her mental screaming stopped dead. What does he mean by that? Why won't he do anything to me? Am I not pretty enough? Not sexy enough? I'm not afraid of what he'll do to me. I'm afraid he'll do nothing. It's fine. I'll move in first. I'll figure something out. I pushed the side dishes toward her, trying to distract myself before I heard any more of her wild thoughts. "You should eat. It'll get cold, and the seafood porridge will get fishy. We can deal with moving your things after we get back from my parents tomorrow." I can go back and pack right now. I could move in tonight. While she was screaming internally on the outside, Chloe just gave a prim nod. "That's fine. Whatever you think is best. My schedule is flexible." I couldn't suppress the smile on my face. My wife was so much fun. It made me want to tease her just to see her adorable reactions. After we finished our porridge, we took a slow walk home. It wasn't too late, and there was still traffic on the streets. I discovered that I didn't need to hear her thoughts. We could have a natural, happy conversation all on our own. Back home, we went upstairs one after the other. As we stood at our separate doorways, Chloe said, "Good night," but her mind was still churning. Is he really not going to ask me to move in tonight? I don't have much stuff. He could just carry me in. This time, I didn't indulge her inner wishes. I needed some time to get used to the idea of having a roommate in my bed. I looked at my navy blue sheets, and an image of Chloe lying there flashed through my mind. I shook my head, pushing away the less than wholesome thoughts. The next day was hectic, but I still managed to leave the office on time. The moment I stepped out of my office, Kevin intercepted me with a sly grin. In his hands were a gift bag he'd already purchased and a huge bouquet of flowers. "Heading to your parents for dinner, boss?" I already picked up the gift. The flowers were my idea. "I don't think you've ever given flowers to Mrs. Walker, or at least you've never asked me to order any." He glanced at me cautiously. "If you'd rather not, I can just..." Before he could finish, I took the flowers and the gift from him. "She likes tulips. Order me a bouquet of those for tomorrow." I walked away, trying to look composed. Behind me, Kevin let out a happy, "All right," followed by a chorus of knowing chuckles from my other employees. Chloe was already dressed and waiting when I got home. When I handed her the roses, she assumed they were for my mother. "I know you like tulips, but they didn't have any. These roses are for you. I'll get you tulips next time." The girl holding the bouquet looked up at me, her eyes filled with pure, unhidden joy. "Ethan gave me flowers for the first time. I have to preserve them. I'll take them to the lab later and make them into preserved flowers." I smiled, a pang of guilt hitting me as I saw her surprise. "If you like them, I'll send you flowers every day." "Oh no, that's too wasteful. But could you send them once a week? Getting flowers from you would make me happy for a whole week. Maybe even longer." She wasn't being coy at all. She looked at me with such hopeful eyes as she made the request. Her sudden directness caught me completely off guard. Her smile struck me right in the chest, sending my heart into a frantic rhythm. "Okay," I promised. "Next time, I'll pick them out myself." "That would be amazing. I'll be happy for a long, long time." She buried her face in the fiery red roses. My heart was pounding, just like it did the very first time I saw her. I was starting to understand what she meant about falling in love with the same person over and over again. It was real. I looked at Chloe's face, even more delicate than the flowers, and touched the bridge of my nose with a smile. "So, is the happy Professor Davis ready to go home with me now?" Chloe felt she was a lost cause. Plenty of people called her Professor Davis. But when it came from Ethan's lips, it sounded intimate, almost like a caress. It transformed a simple title into something special. She hugged the flowers tighter, murmured, "Hum," and with a blush on her cheeks, set the bouquet on the table. She gently stroked a petal, her eyes crinkling with a smile. "Such beautiful flowers. Such a gentle husband." This is the 999th time Chloe Davis has fallen in love with him. My dream should come true soon. After the 998th time, this was the most earnest thought I'd ever heard from her. Usually, her mind was a lively, chaotic jumble of disconnected ideas. But whenever she counted the times she'd fallen for me, her thoughts became reverent and sincere. The drive to my parents' house wasn't long, only about 10 minutes. When we arrived, my mom immediately pulled Chloe aside for a private chat, and I was dispatched to the kitchen to help my dad with dinner. My dad asked the usual questions about work and life, then suddenly changed his tone. "So, how are things between you and Chloe?" "They're fine." "Why?" My dad's brow furrowed slightly. "Are you wearing that Kylan pendant I gave you?" His question felt odd, the subject changed too abrupt. I pulled the Kylan pendant out from under my shirt. "Yeah, I'm wearing it. I only take it off to sleep and shower." Couldn't help but sigh. "You're a professor, Dad. Since when are you so superstitious?" Seeing that I was wearing it, his expression relaxed a bit. He just grunted. "What do you know? Just keep wearing it. It's good for you and Chloe." He paused. "Have you noticed anything different since you started wearing it?" What could be different about a pendant? Was it radioactive? I was about to dismiss it, but then I remembered. The mind reading had started not long after he gave it to me. Could it actually be some kind of magic? I decided to play along, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "Well, lately, I've been feeling a little off. It's like I keep hearing voices." I watched his face carefully as I spoke, but he was already heating a pan on the stove. His expression was unreadable as he just pointed for me to bring him the meat. "Then you should get some rest, and maybe see a doctor." His casual dismissal made me frown. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Did it really have nothing to do with my dad? Couldn't tell. The atmosphere at dinner was great, until my mom asked directly, "Ethan, you're not getting any younger. When are you and Chloe planning on having a baby? Your sister and her husband barely see each other, so I don't push them. But you and Chloe live together. Are you two deliberately avoiding it?" Chloe quickly jumped in. "Mom, Dad, it's not his fault. I've been too busy." "Don't cover for him," my mom said. "I can look up your teaching schedule, you know?" She turned her gaze to me, probably thinking it would be rude to ask about my performance. But with young people's lifestyles these days, staying up all night, it was a valid concern. She paused. "I've booked a full physical for both of you. Go when you have time." "Mom, I was just busy before," I protested. "That was before. What about now?" My mother might be getting older, but her mind was as sharp as ever. "Yeah, what about now? Does Ethan want to make a baby? I'm ready to cooperate whenever." I shot Chloe a knowing look. She was staring back at me with a perfectly innocent expression, looking pure and pristine. "I'm not busy anymore," I said. "Don't rush us. All this pressure isn't helping." "What does he mean by that? Does he really want to?" I'm ready, Ethan. I'm going to go home tonight and break out the stuff Olivia gave me. Hehe, time for cuddles." I quickly put a piece of meat on both her plate and my mom's. Let's eat. Let's eat." My parents exchanged a look. They could clearly sense that the atmosphere between us was different this time. In the end, they dropped the subject. On the drive home, I kept waiting for her to bring up the massage again, but she never did, not even in her head. So when we got home, I made a point of stretching dramatically and rubbing my own shoulder. That was a clear enough hint, right? Sure enough, Chloe noticed. She watched me, hesitating for a moment before finally speaking. "I learned some massage techniques from the other female professors at work. Do you want me to try? I'm not licensed, but I'm amazing at it. Please let me try, Ethan. Please. I'll be so sad if you don't." "You cook, I massage. I'm the perfect, considerate wife. Just give me a chance to show you." Listening to her internal pleading, I smiled. "All right then, I'm in your hands, Chloe." My words made her eyes go wide. He called me Chloe. It sounds so different when he says it. My whole body is turning to jelly. I watched her face turn a deeper and deeper red as her thoughts grew wilder. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. I'll come find you in a bit." With that, she practically fled. Watching her stumble awkwardly up the stairs, I felt a pang of regret. She was so shy. Was the massage off now? I shouldn't have teased her. But an hour later, a soft knock came at my door. The girl at the door was wearing a white silk slip. Her long, slender legs immediately caught my eye. Her pale skin was flushed a delicate pink, and her almond eyes, which could be so seductive, now held a look of pure, wide-eyed innocence. "Ethan," she said softly, "I'm here to give you that massage." I turned at the sound of her voice, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe. She was wearing a white silk slip I'd never seen before, the hemline barely grazing the tops of her thighs. Her long, straight legs seemed to glow in the soft lamplight. Fresh from the shower, her skin had a tempting pinkish glow. Those almond eyes, usually so cool and composed, were now shimmering with nervousness as she looked at me with an innocent gaze. My Adam's apple bobbed. I forced my gaze away from her and tried to sound casual. "You said you learned a few things, right? Just try not to burn yourself this time. Ah, Ethan looks so hot just out of the shower. His hair is still dripping, and his collarbones are so sexy. Chloe, get a grip. You're here to conquer him, not the other way around, right? Massage. I'm a professional. Listening to her internal pep talk, I couldn't hide my smile any longer. I patted the space on the bed next to me. Come on over, Professor Davis. Let's see what you've got. She shuffled to the edge of the bed and knelt beside me. Her fingertips were cool as they rested on my shoulders. Her movements were a little hesitant, but the pressure was perfect. I closed my eyes, feeling her soft fingers work at the knots in my muscles. I could smell our shared body wash on her skin, mixed with her own unique, faint, fruity scent. Ethan's shoulders are so broad, and his muscles are so firm. Is this what security feels like? I'll just feel them a little longer. I wonder if he likes this. Should I press harder? Why isn't he saying anything? Is it not comfortable? Oh no, what if I break him? It's perfect, I said, sensing her anxiety. You're a natural. At the praise, the frantic thoughts in her head exploded into a fireworks display of Ethan praised me, and her hands moved with renewed focus. The room was quiet, filled only with the sound of her soft breathing and the rustle of fabric. It was a peaceful, tender moment, the likes of which I hadn't experienced in our entire 2 years of marriage. Chloe, I said, suddenly opening my eyes and catching her hand as it moved across my shoulder. Let's stop sleeping in separate rooms. Move in with me. Her body went rigid. The fireworks in her mind instantly went nuclear. Move in? Is he serious? Does he mean what I think he means? This is all happening so fast. What do I say? I have to be cool. Yes, be cool. She took a deep breath, trying to keep her expression neutral, and whispered in a voice that was barely audible, okay. The next day, Chloe's move was shockingly fast. It was less of a move and more of a personal relocation directly into my room. Our life entered a new, sweet chapter that felt like a dream. My mind-reading ability became the ultimate cheat code for our relationship. I knew what she wanted to eat, where she wanted to go, even when she just needed a hug, all before she had to ask. And slowly, she dropped her guard, revealing her true, affectionate self to me. But the peace didn't last. My company's flagship original graphic novel, a project we'd invested heavily in, was suddenly preempted. A rival company released a story with an almost identical concept and plot just before our launch. My company was immediately embroiled in a plagiarism scandal. Our stock plummeted, and we faced an unprecedented crisis. To make matters worse, an anonymous email was sent to all of my senior staff. It contained proof that Chloe had accessed our company's internal network and downloaded core files, alleging she had stolen trade secrets to give a rival research project at her university an edge. The atmosphere in the conference room was glacial. All eyes were on me, their expressions a mixture of suspicion and pity. I just sat there, quietly looking at Chloe beside me, her face ashen. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, but I could hear the desperate, broken cries in her mind. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't. Ethan, you have to believe me. Someone is framing me. Ethan, why are you looking at me like that? Don't you believe me either? In that instant, my heart felt like it was being stabbed with needles. But I knew this wasn't the time for sentiment. Whoever had targeted my wife had clearly come prepared. If I showed my trust in her too easily, the real culprit would only dig in deeper. I took a deep breath and, in a voice colder than I had ever used with her, said, Chloe, until this is investigated, you're suspended from all company-related duties. Go home and wait for my call. She snapped her head up to look at me, her beautiful eyes wide with shock and disbelief, which slowly faded into a dead, empty gray. She said nothing. She just stood up and walked out of the conference room. After she left, I immediately had Sam start digging into the rival company, especially anyone who had been in recent contact with them. At the same time, I called Olivia and asked her to go stay with Chloe and to help me find out what she could about one person, Jessica Vance. My gut told me she was involved. Sure enough, that night, as I deliberately kept my distance from Chloe at home, I overheard Jessica's triumphant thoughts as she planned her next move. Everything was going according to plan. For the next few days, I gave Chloe the cold shoulder. The atmosphere in our house was frigid. I listened to the entire progression of her thoughts, from hurt and confusion to utter despair. Every moment was like a knife twisting in my own heart. I knew it was cruel, but it was the only way to make our enemy let their guard down. Finally, on a rainy night, she broke. She didn't cry or scream. She just silently packed a bag, got in her car, and drove away. I tracked her car's GPS and saw she had gone to the old neighborhood where we first met. I followed her immediately. Rain slicked the old alleyways, She was standing under an umbrella, perfectly still, at the entrance to the alley that had changed both our lives. Through the wind and rain, I heard her broken thoughts. This is the place. He was wearing his high school uniform, backlit by the sun, like a hero. He said he thought he'd found a lost kid. Ethan Walker, I've loved you for so many years. Why, in the end, couldn't you give me even a little bit of trust? Was I wrong to pretend to be the person you wanted? My first love, from the very beginning, it was always you. First love, lost kid. The dusty memories came flooding back. I remembered, the ninth grade girl, so small for her age because she'd skipped grades, cornered by a few bullies, staring them down with wide, defiant eyes, refusing to cry. It was her. I couldn't hold back any longer. I strode forward and pulled her into a tight embrace from behind. She trembled violently in my arms, her umbrella clattering to the wet pavement. I'm sorry, I whispered hoarsely in her ear. I'm so sorry, Chloe. It's not that I didn't believe you. I was putting on a show for the real enemy. I believe you. From the very beginning, I've only ever believed you. I laid out my entire plan for her, and I told her that I finally remembered. I remembered her, the cute, stubborn, lost kid I had found all those years ago. In my arms, her silent sobs turned into a torrent of tears as she let out all her pain and fear. With Olivia and Sam's help, we quickly gathered all the evidence of Jessica's and the rival company's malicious setup. At their press conference, just as they were triumphantly announcing their original new work, I walked in with my lawyer and the police. The big screen behind them switched from their promotional video to a recording of Jessica conspiring with her accomplices, along with irrefutable proof that they had fabricated evidence and hacked our company's servers. Faced with the evidence, Jessica's face went pale, and she was arrested on the spot. The crisis was averted. My company was not only exonerated but, in a twist of fate, gained massive public sympathy and attention. And after weathering this storm, my relationship with Chloe became unbreakable. Afterwards, I asked my father about the pendant. He was silent for a long time before he told me that the Kylan pendant was the Walker family's ancestral Unity Jade. It could only be activated when a descendant's marriage faced a major crisis of trust, granting one partner the gift of heart listening to help them see through deception and overcome the trial. Now that you two are truly connected, its power should be fading, my father said. And he was right. After that, I heard Chloe's thoughts less and less frequently, the voice growing fainter and fainter, until one day, my world fell completely silent. I didn't feel a sense of loss. Instead, I felt a profound sense of peace. I no longer needed the cheat code. I had learned how to love and how to trust on my own. Sam and Olivia also reconnected during our joint operation, resolving their old issues and getting back together in a very public way. A year later, in the delivery room, Chloe was drenched in sweat, her grip on my hand so tight her nails were digging into my skin. She was in too much pain to speak, her face a mask of tears and effort. Seeing her in so much pain was agonizing. All I could do was kiss her forehead again and again, whispering words of encouragement. Just then, in the quiet of my own mind, a faint but crystal clear, tearful voice cried out, "Baby, get out here. If you don't come out soon, I'm going to scratch your dad's handsome face off." Wah, Ethan, I'm never doing this again. But, if you kiss me, maybe I could do just one more. I froze, then leaned down and pressed a deep kiss to her sweat-dampened lips. In a voice only she could hear, I whispered, "Honey, I heard you. Just this one. We're done." Chloe's eyes flew open, her face a picture of pure shock. A second later, a loud, clear cry filled the room as our child was born. Amid the sound of our baby's cries, she looked at me and gave a weak smile, her almond eyes once again shining with a galaxy of brilliant stars.